Marriage creates rights, duties, and protections, but sometimes marriage breaks down, and the law must step in. A client may ask, "Can I get an annulment instead of a divorce?" Or another might ask, "Am I entitled to alimony?" Or, "We signed a prenuptial agreement. Will the court respect it?" In this lesson, you'll learn how lawyers explain the basics of marriage and divorce law using clear and professional legal English. By the end of today's lesson, you'll be able to use vocabulary like engagement, annulment, alimony, grounds for divorce, matrimonial property regime, prenuptial agreement, reconciliation, and dissolution. Explain legal events with grammar, present perfect and past perfect. For example, they have divorced versus they had already divorced before signing the agreement. Apply legal phrases such as file a petition for annulment, claim alimony, enter into a prenuptial agreement, reconcile after separation. Use key expressions like irretrievable breakdown of marriage, contested divorce, no fault divorce, and spousal support order. This will prepare you to handle marriage and divorce cases with confidence. Let's start with a story that brings together several issues in marriage and divorce law. Charles and Elena have been married for 8 years. They signed a prenuptial agreement, prenup agreement, before their wedding, stating that Elena would not claim ownership of Charles' family business. Now their relationship has broken down, and they want to end the marriage. Elena asks her lawyer, "Can we have the marriage annulled instead of divorced?" The lawyer explains, annulment is possible only if the marriage was invalid from the beginning. For example, if one party was already married, or if there was fraud. Your marriage was valid, so annulment does not apply. You must seek divorce. Charles says, "But she agreed not to claim anything. We had a prenuptial agreement." The lawyer replies, "Yes, but the court will still examine whether the agreement is fair and consistent with the law." Prenuptial agreements are not always absolute. Finally, Elena asks, "Am I entitled to alimony?" The lawyer explains, "Possibly. If you have been financially dependent during the marriage, you may claim alimony. The court will decide based on your needs and Charles's ability to pay." This case shows how lawyers guide clients through different aspects of marriage and divorce law, annulment versus divorce, prenuptial agreements, and alimony. An engagement is the promise to marry in the future. In some legal systems, breaking off an engagement can even lead to disputes over property or expenses. For example, they announced their engagement last month. Let's look at a story about Lucy and Martin. They announce their engagement and begin planning their wedding. Martin buys an expensive engagement ring. A few months later, they break up. Lucy wants to keep the ring, but Martin demands it back. Their lawyer explains, in some jurisdictions, the ring is considered a conditional gift. Because the marriage did not take place, the ring must be returned. In others, it is treated as an unconditional gift, so Lucy can keep it. This shows how even engagement before marriage can raise legal questions. An annulment means the marriage never legally existed. Unlike divorce, which ends a valid marriage, annulment erases it from the start. For example, the court granted an annulment due to fraud. Let's take a look at a story. Sophia marries Javier, but later discovers that he was already legally married to another woman. She files for annulment. The court investigates and declares this marriage is void. It never had legal effect. The annulment restores Sophia to her legal status as if she had never been married. This is very different from divorce, which acknowledges the marriage, ends it. Alimony, sometimes called spousal support, is money paid after marriage ends to support the financially weaker spouse. For example, the court ordered him to pay alimony to his ex-wife. look at this story. After a divorce, Laura struggles financially because she left her job during the marriage to raise children. She asks her lawyer, "Do I have a right to support?" The lawyer replies, "Yes, you may claim alimony. The court will examine your needs and your husband's income. If approved, he must pay monthly support." The judge rules alimony is awarded for 3 years to allow Laura to reestablish her career. This shows how alimony protects spouses who were financially dependent. Grounds for divorce are the legal reasons the law accepts for ending a marriage. Examples are adultery and abandonment are common grounds for divorce. Let's look at a story. Miguel files for divorce, claiming his wife abandoned him for over a year. The lawyer explains, in this jurisdiction, abandonment, cruelty, and adultery are all valid grounds for divorce. If proven, the court will dissolve your marriage. The court finds the evidence sufficient and grants the divorce. In some systems, irretrievable breakdown of marriage is also recognized as grounds, even without fault. A matrimonial property regime defines how assets are shared during and after a marriage. Common regimes include community property and separate property. For example, they chose a separate property matrimonial regime. Let's look at a story. Before marriage, Anna and Diego meet with a notary. The notary explains, if you choose community property, everything acquired during marriage will belong to both of you. If you choose separate property, each spouse keeps their own assets. They sign a contract adopting the separate property regime. Years later, during divorce, Anna keeps her own business and Diego keeps his apartment, exactly as their chosen regime provided. This shows how matrimonial regimes influence divorce settlements and is different in every jurisdiction. A prenuptial agreement, or more commonly called prenup, is a contract made before marriage that determines financial arrangements if the marriage ends. For example, they signed a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. Let's look at a story about Lucy and Daniel. Lucy owns a family business. Before marrying Daniel, she worries about protecting it. Her lawyer advises you should sign a prenuptial agreement. It can specify that your business remains separate property even in divorce. Lucy and Daniel agree and sign the prenup. Years later, when they divorce, Daniel cannot claim ownership of the business. The court enforces the agreement, showing how prenups give couples control over future disputes. Reconciliation means separated spouses decided to stay together instead of divorcing. For example, the couple attempted reconciliation before the divorce. So, after years of conflict, Andres and Camila file for divorce. During the proceedings, they attend counseling. They reconcile, withdraw the divorce petition, and continue their marriage. The judge notes, because the parties have reconciled, the case is dismissed. Reconciliation is an important option in family law. Courts often encourage couples to attempt it before finalizing divorce. Dissolution is the legal term for ending a marriage, civil union, or partnership. Divorce is one type of dissolution. For example, the court declared the dissolution of their marriage. Let's look at a story about Paula and Javier, who are in a civil partnership. When they separate, Paula asks, "Is this divorce?" The lawyer explains, "Not exactly. For marriages, we use the word divorce. For civil partnerships or unions, the law uses the term dissolution. Both mean a legal ending of the relationship. The court issues a judgment of dissolution, confirming that the partnership no longer exists. The term is useful for explaining different types of legal relationships beyond traditional marriage. The present perfect is used for actions that happened in the past but still affect the present. For example, they have divorced recently. This means they are divorced now. The past perfect is used when one past action happened before another. For example, they had divorced before signing the agreement. First, they divorced. Later, they signed the agreement. In family and divorce law, both tenses are common because lawyers need to show when events happened and how they affect current legal rights. A lawyer is updating a client's file. He says the spouses have signed a prenuptial agreement, so their property rights are clear. The couple has reconciled, so the divorce petition may be withdrawn. She has filed for divorce this year, which means the case is now before the court. In all these examples, the present perfect connects past actions to their current legal effect. The prenup exists now. The couple is reconciled now. The divorce petition is active now. A client asks a lawyer to explain the timeline of her divorce. The lawyer uses the past perfect to show the order of events. You had married before drafting the prenuptial agreement, so the court may question its validity. Your husband had abandoned the family before you filed for divorce. That strengthens your grounds for divorce. You and your spouse had reconciled once, but later returned to court. The past reconciliation does not prevent divorce now. The past perfect shows which action came first in the past, very important when explaining legal timelines in family law. To file a petition for annulment means to start a legal case asking the court to declare that a marriage was never valid. For example, she filed a petition for annulment after discovering fraud. Let's look at a story. Maria marries Pablo, but later learns that he hid the fact he was already married abroad. Shocked, she visits her lawyer. The lawyer explains, you may file a petition for annulment. If granted, the marriage will be considered void from the beginning, as if it never existed. The lawyer prepares documents proving bigamy. In court, the judge rules the marriage is annulled. It never had legal effect. This phrase emphasizes the difference between ending a valid marriage, divorce, and erasing an invalid one, annulment. To claim alimony means to ask the court to order financial support from one spouse to the other. For example, he claimed alimony after the divorce. Let's look at a story. During divorce, Juliet tells her lawyer, I stopped working to raise our children. I cannot support myself right now. The lawyer replies, you can claim alimony. The court will consider your needs and your spouse's income. The judge later rules the husband must pay monthly alimony for 3 years until she can reestablish her career, and this phrase shows how family law protects spouses who were financially dependent during marriage, like we looked at earlier on in the class. To enter into a prenuptial agreement means to sign a contract before marriage that defines property rights if the marriage ends. For example, they entered into a prenuptial agreement to protect their assets. Let's look at a story. Santiago owns a large company. Before marrying Elena, he worries about what could happen in a divorce. His lawyer advises, you should enter into a prenuptial agreement. It can state that your company remains your separate property, not marital property. They sign the agreement, and years later, when they divorce, Elena cannot claim ownership of the business. The court enforces the prenup, protecting Santiago's interest. This phrase is common in advising clients or those with family businesses. To reconcile after separation means that the spouses who had separated decided to remain married. For example, the couple reconciled after separation. Let's look at a story about Laura and Mark, who separated after years of conflict. Laura files for divorce, but during the proceedings, they attend counseling and decide to reconcile. The lawyer informs the court, my clients have reconciled after separation. They wish to continue their marriage. Please dismiss the divorce petition. The judge agrees and the case is closed. This phrase is important because reconciliation can stop divorce proceedings and legally preserve the marriage. Here are some key expressions used by lawyers and courts in marriage and divorce law. Irretrievable breakdown of marriage. This is common legal ground for divorce, meaning the relationship cannot be saved. For example, the court granted divorce due to irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. Let's say a couple argues constantly for years. The wife tells the court, "We've tried counseling, but nothing works." The judge rules, "This marriage has suffered irretrievable breakdown. Divorce is granted." Next one is contested divorce. A contested divorce happens when spouses cannot agree on terms like property, custody, or alimony. For example, the case became a contested divorce over the division of assets. Let's look at one where David and Anna file for divorce. They disagree about who should keep the family home and how to divide savings. The case goes to trial, a contested divorce. The judge must decide all terms since the couple cannot agree. Third one, no-fault divorce. A no-fault divorce allows a marriage to end without proving adultery, cruelty, or abandonment. For example, they obtained a no-fault divorce after living apart for 2 years. For example, Laura and Tom agree their marriage is over. Neither blames the other. Their lawyer files a petition for a no-fault divorce, stating only, "The marriage has broken down irretrievably." The court grants divorce quickly because no wrongdoing had to be proven. Spousal support order. This is a court decision requiring one spouse to pay money to the other after divorce. For example, the court issued a spousal support order of $500 per month. Let's look at the story of where Clara gave up her career during marriage to raise children. After divorce, she cannot support herself. So the judge orders the husband must pay Clara $1,000 per month in spousal support until she reestablishes employment. These expressions are widely used in family law cases and help lawyers explain divorce processes in clear legal English. Let's bring everything together with one extended case. Mariana has been married to Javier for 12 years. Recently, their relationship collapsed. She meets her lawyer and asks, "Can I annul this marriage instead of divorcing? I feel like it was a mistake from the start." The lawyer explains, annulment is only possible if the marriage was never valid. For example, if your spouse was already married or if there was fraud. Your marriage was valid, so you cannot annul it, but you can file for divorce. Mariana then says, "But we signed a prenuptial agreement before our wedding. Does it still apply?" The lawyer replies, "Yes, you entered into a prenuptial agreement. It may limit claims to Javier's business, but the courts will still check if the agreement is fair." The lawyer tells her, "Prenups are enforceable, but not absolute." So then Mariana asks, "Am I entitled to financial help?" And the lawyer responds, "Yes. You may claim alimony if you prove that you are financially dependent. The court may issue a spousal support order requiring Javier to pay monthly support." And finally, the lawyer warns, if you and Javier cannot agree on terms, this will become a contested divorce. The judge will decide property division, alimony, and other issues. But if you both agree, it could be a no-fault divorce, which is faster and, of course, less stressful. In court, the judge hears both sides, and he rules the marriage is dissolved due to irretrievable breakdown. The prenuptial agreement is partly enforced. Javier's business remains separate, but marital property is divided equally. A spousal support order is granted to Mariana for 3 years. And this story shows how vocabulary, grammar, legal phrases, and key expressions all come together when a lawyer advises a client. Let's review what we covered in today's lesson on marriage and divorce law basics. First, we built vocabulary, engagement and annulment, how marriages begin, and when they can be declared invalid. alimony, grounds for divorce, matrimonial property regimes, and prenuptial agreements, all key concepts in divorce cases. Reconciliation and dissolution, when marriages continue or formally end. Second, we practice grammar, present perfect to connect past events to present consequences. She has filed for divorce, or past perfect, to explain one past event before another. They had divorced before signing the settlement. Third, we applied legal phrases. File a petition for annulment, claim alimony, enter into a prenuptial agreement, reconcile after separation. Phrases lawyers use every day in family practice. Fourth, we explored key expressions, irretrievable breakdown of marriage, contested divorce, no fault divorce, and spousal support order, terms that appear in statutes, petitions, and judgments. Finally, we used a wrap-up story, a lawyer advising Mariana on annulment versus divorce, enforcing a prenup, claiming alimony, and handling a contested divorce in family court. Now you can confidently explain the basics of marriage and divorce law in English with clear vocabulary, precise grammar, and the practical phrases needed to advise clients.